Alrighty, so since we do have a gap between both games that is going to be happening tonight, where the game between Atlanta versus Orlando just finished a couple minutes ago, and the game between Vancouver versus Portland is not going to kick off until another 45 minutes, I thought this would be a great time for me to do the preview of the 11 remaining games of match week number 24, because, if I do it now, I can basically upload this one not relatively late at night, and then of course I will do the review and also upload that video that is relatively late at night, but it is at least not as late as I originally was going to do the preview, and then I'll pretty much basically upload this video in crazy hour. And obviously you don't want me to be uploading a video at crazy hour, and especially for those of you that have notification on my channel, I don't want to wake you up at 3 a.m. in the morning realizing that I just upload a video and so forth. But that being said, in terms of these 11 games, as I mentioned yesterday, we have 10 games that's going to be happening on Sunday, and only one game that is going to be happening on Sunday. And all these 11 games, well, at least besides the first one, which that game is going to be on Twitter, none of them is going to be on national television. So basically, it looks like this week we'll only have one national televised game. And again, if you don't include Twitter, and no game that is going to be national televised on the ESPN network, which, kind of surprised that of course is the case, because there's definitely some games here that they could definitely televise on national television. But that being said, also with football season back, both college football and NFL back already. Well, actually college football has already been back. The NFL, of course, being back this week. It's understandable why maybe the ESPN network decided to not have a game, and we're probably not going to see the ESPN network covering any game that is going to be on Saturday, because they have the exclusive rights to basically broadcast college football all Saturday long. But it's also going to be interesting to see how the ratings is going to be with the way that football season is back, and usually when football season is back, that's when the ratings doesn't do relatively well in MLS, because now MLS will have to compete with the NFL in terms of the rating, especially for those Sunday national televised game. And yeah, that does get a little bit tough for MLS, especially. NFL is still, of course, the king sport in terms of TV ratings out of the 5 major professional sport here in the U.S. But let us actually begin, after I kind of gone through a bit of a long spiel to begin doing this preview. And we'll start off with what is supposed to be the only national televised game remaining, which is the Colorado Rapids versus the LA Galaxy, as this game will be starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is a 1:50 p.m. local time kickoff, which means, yeah, again, this game is going to be on Twitter. And coming into this game, this is a game between two teams that are kind of heading into opposite direction. Colorado is just red hot right now, and they can definitely take that top spot in the Western Conference if they can continue this incredible unbeaten run that they are. That has now gone to 7 games. While for the Galaxy, they are definitely starting to fall down the table, and there also are starting to be some teams that is below the 4th place line that have started to catch up to them, because they've only won 1 game out of their last 5 that they of course play. Now the last 5 games for the Rapids, in the last game they were able to win 1-0 on the road against the Quakes. Before, it was a 1-1 draw between them and SKC, but then it was a 2-1 win against RSL, a 2-1 road win against the Galaxy the last time both of these teams play against each other, and then a 3-1 road win against the Houston Dynamo. For the Galaxy, they did not play last week, but the last time they play in Heineken Rivalry Week, they were involved with another crazy out traffic game against LAFC, where it was a free draw in that one. But before that, they play in the Cali Clasico, and they lost that Cali Clasico at home, 2-1 to the San Jose Earthquakes, losing 2-1 at home against the Rapids before winning 1-0 against Minnesota, and then drawing 1-1 against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Now, keep in mind, this game, I did hear there was some speculation that Chicharito could be back in this game for the Galaxy, and that is definitely great news, knowing the fact that, I don't think the Galaxy has been struggling in terms of goal scoring, but obviously they desperately need their main goal scorer back, and obviously we'll see whether or not if Chicharito, if he is going to be back with the Galaxy in this game, whether he's probably going to come off the bench or start. I think he most likely is going to come off the bench because it's been a very long layoff for him, and I don't think they're going to really put him into a game where, you know, it's still a big game between two teams that isn't the top 4 of the Western Conference, but it's not a game like, let's say, maybe El Tráfico, where you're going to bring Chicharito in and start him because it's just such a big game against your biggest rival. But that being said, you know, I still think the Rapids are favorites coming into this game. And again, they are just been red hot right now, and they can keep winning the amount of games that they have. They can catch the Seattle Sounders. They actually technically have the highest points per game ratio in the Western Conference. And like I said, if they can win that game in hand over or that game in hand, they will catch the Seattle Sounders and be at the top of the Western Conference. Who would have thought that would be something that would be saying in the beginning of the season, let alone as we're heading into the stretch run of the MLS season. But moving on, in terms of the next match, speaking of the Seattle Sounders, they are going to be playing against Minnesota. So, yeah, this is, of course, the rematch of the MLS Western Conference Final in a game that, yeah, I am definitely not looking forward to. Though, I will say this, you know, as much as I do fear that the Loons could get destroyed again in this game against the Sounders, there is some slim hope that I have with the Sounders in this game because, you know, the Sounders, they did come off of a 2-0 loss against the Portland Timbers at home in the Cascadia Derby, and now the record is 12-6-4. While Minnesota, of course, won 2-1 against Houston away, only their second road win this season, improved the record to 8-7-6, as this game will start at 8 p.m. or not 8 p.m., 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, and the actual kickoff is 2:08 p.m. local time. But the slimmer of hope that I have with the Loons potentially maybe get a point or even get a surprising 3 points against the Sounders is the fact that the Sounders have not done well this season at Lumen's Field. And that is a really big shocking statement to say because they have always been a team that is tough to beat at home, and going to Lumen's Field and going to Seattle, if you're an away team, you're not going to expect to get a lot of points, and you'll probably even be lucky if you can get a point out of the Sounders when you play them on the road. But that's just not been the case this season. I mean, their home record this season for the Sounders, well, it's not terrible. I mean, it's a 5-3-4 record. It's definitely not the best, and certainly not one that you would expect for a team that is competing for MLS Cup this season. And again, it's kind of weird the fact that they've struggled this season at home, and it's not like the fact that this season is like last year where, you know, if the Sounders did struggle last year, maybe the reason has to do with no fans being in the stands. Fans are back in the stands this season, and yet they are they are struggling at home this year, which again, it's kind of a big mystery of why that, of course, is the case. But in terms of the last 5 games for the Sounders, despite the fact that they have struggled a little bit at home, they have been very good on the road because besides the 2-0 loss that they have against the Timbers at home, they won 2-1 against Columbus on the road in the rematch of the MLS Cup, won 1-0 on the road against FC Dallas, won 6-2 against the Portland Timbers in that memorable Cascadia Derby for them, and then they of course drew 1-1 against FC Dallas. For Minnesota, they won 2-1 against the Dynamo in the last game before it was a frustrating 0-0 draw at home against SKC and another frustrating 1-1 draw against the Quakes on the road. They, of course, had even more frustrating resort against the Galaxy, losing 1-0 in that game before winning 2-0 against Houston in that game. And, you know, for the Loons, I will also say that this is a beginning of a 3 games where this team is really running through the gauntlet because, you know, after this game against the Sounders, they play against SKC in the middle of the week, and then following that, they play against the Galaxy at home. And yeah, those are 3 teams that the Loons do not have a good record against them. And, you know, even though they are pretty close in terms of getting into the top 4, they do have a stretch where I think this is probably the toughest stretch for them. And this is really a stretch that this team really needs to step up. But my worry is, will they able to do so? And will we have, of course, the goal scorer to do so? I mean, in the last game, I did see Adrian Hunou finally living up his potential and scoring the goals that I desperately need him to score, but we shall see whether or not if that's just the fact that he was able to score goals against one of the worst teams in the league, or the fact that it's actually for Rio. And not to mention the fact that the Loons, they're still not going to have their most important player in Robin Lod. And potentially, I heard there's a rumor that Reynoso might not be available in this game too. Yeah, that is going to be really tough. But at least I heard there is a speculation that Fragapane should be back for the Loons in this game. So maybe that does give a little bit hope on this attack. But like I said, I don't expect much from this game. If the Loons do lose this game, I guess you just have to move on and hope that you can get some result against Sporting KC in the middle of the week. But if they can get a point or even get a win in that game in this game against the Sounders, it definitely improved their chances in terms of getting into the top 4 spot of the Western Conference. Because, you know, as much as it doesn't sound like it's a lot to get into the top 4, it does when you want to host at least one game at home in the playoffs. But now moving on into the next match is New England versus NYCFC. So the two teams met each other not long after, and for the Revs, they are looking to get some revenge after what happened not long ago, where they suffered their first loss in what seems like forever against NYCFC, as they're going to be coming into this game with a 16-4-4 record after winning 1-0 against the Union away, while NYCFC, you know, they lost 3-1 against Nashville away to drop their record to 10-4-7, as this game will start at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:08 p.m. local time. Last 5 games for both of these teams. For the Revs, they of course won 1-0 against the Union, but they did lose 2-0 against NYCFC before winning 4-1 against FC Cincinnati, winning 3-2 against DC United, and winning 2-1 on the road against Toronto FC. For NYCFC, they of course, as I mentioned, lost 3-1 against Nashville, but they did win 2-0 against New England, lost 1-0 on the road against the Union, won 2-0 against Inter Miami before drawing 2-2 against NYCFC. So at least when you look at these last 5 games, it's a pretty telling story that NYCFC is kind of in a bit of an inconsistent form, and especially when they play on the road, yeah, that's when they of course struggle. And I guess maybe it's no surprise that that is the case, because when you basically play in a baseball stadium, of course you're going to get a huge home field advantage. And yeah, you know, this is going to be a tough game for NYCFC, and especially for a Revs team that definitely wants some revenge after what happened just a couple of weeks ago, and look to once again flex their superiority in the Eastern Conference, where, you know, again, you know, even if they might go in a bad run for the rest of the season, I still think this Revs team is going to win the East, because they're just so far on top in the Eastern Conference, where it's really now their next goal is trying to win the Supporter Shield, and they also have a relatively big lead in terms of that standings as we hit into the stretch one of the MLS season. But that being said, moving on into the next match is the Atlantic Cup between the Red Bulls versus DC United, as this game will... Oh, actually, I didn't put the time of this game. This game will start at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:08 p.m. local time. And this is one of those games where I feel like they probably could have put on national television, because not only the fact that it is an Atlantic Cup, but this is definitely going to be an emotional game, especially for the Red Bulls, and even for the people in New York, because, you know, this weekend unfortunately is the anniversary of the 20th year since 9/11 happened, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a huge tribute that's going to happen in this game when the Red Bulls take on DC United, and I expect they're probably even going to put a tifo, as they did, I think, a couple of years ago when the Red Bulls did play on 9/11. But yeah, it's always a very emotional day, certainly in the New York area. But that being said, coming into this game, this is a big game for both of these teams, and, you know, for the Red Bulls, it's a big game for them because they got to turn this bad run around if they want any shots of potentially getting themselves back to the playoff conversation in the Eastern Conference, because they've only won 1 game in the last 9 games, and their record is now at 6-4-10, and they are really starting to head to a downward spiral in a way where they are running out of time in terms of getting themselves back into a good form and trying to maybe get themselves back to the conversation in the Eastern Conference. Whereas for DC United, you know, they did get a big 3-1 win against the Union at home to improve their record to 9-3-10, but they are the last team that is going to make it to the playoffs if the playoffs would have started this season. And there is definitely a lot of, there's definitely some teams behind him, especially one team, as I will talk about a little bit later in this review, that is named Atlanta United. Yeah, they are definitely hot on their heels, and they're definitely looking to try to basically drag DC United down below the red line, while Atlanta rise themselves above the red line in this game, which, by the way, I think next week they're actually playing against each other, and my oh my, that is going to be not only a big matchup in terms of the playoff conversation in the Eastern Conference, but that's a 6-pointer kind of playoff conversation match between both of these teams. But as of this one, coming into the last 5 games for both of these teams, for the Red Bulls, they of course lost 1-0 against the Fire at home, won 1-0 against Columbus, lost 2-1 against Montreal, lost 2-1 against the Chicago Fire, and drew 0-0 against FC Cincinnati. For DC, they of course won 3-1 against the Union, but they did lose 2-1 on the road against this is wrong there. They did not lose 2-1 to the Red Bulls. They actually lost 2-1 to Atlanta United. As I'm gonna just fix that a little bit. There was not Atlantic Cup just a couple of weeks ago, which I think it was Heineken Rivalry Week, and that would have been a good Heineken Rivalry Week match, but unfortunately that was not meant to be, as they lost 2-1 in this game. They of course lost 2-1 to Atlanta at home. They lost 3-2 on the road against New England, lost 5-2 against Nashville before winning 2-1 against Montreal. And that win that they had against the Union, it was a big win for them, because they were definitely starting to head in the wrong direction in terms of potentially fall out below the red line. But with that win, they're able to just stay above the red line right now. And like I said, they need to win this game if they want to potentially stay above the red line and trying to get themselves some breathing space, because like I said, there is that team called Atlanta United that is literally knocking on the door and are just in a really hot right now to try to get themselves above the red line. But now moving on in terms of the next match, and that of course is FC Cincinnati versus Toronto FC. So this has been a match that I think you should argue this is probably the greatest game of this season in MLS, because it's the Wooden Spoon Derby. And anytime when there is a Wooden Spoon Derby, I'm definitely going to be excited about that. And I'm not trying to be sarcastic or whatsoever. I love to see a Wooden Spoon Derby. And, whenever there's a Wooden Spoon Derby, I guess maybe the winner is probably not happy, because they're not going to win at least some silverware, or at least in this case, a woodware that they're going to win. But coming into this game in the Wooden Spoon Derby, it's FC Cincinnati, who has a 3-8-10 record, versus TFC, who currently has a 3-6-13 record, as this game will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and the actual kickoff is 8:08 p.m. local time. This is, of course, a game, as I mentioned, with the way that this is a Wooden Spoon Derby, both of these teams are not in good form. And that, of course, is the case, as both of these teams are actually combined winless in their last 19 games. Cincinnati, of course, has the second longest active winless run at 12 games, while Toronto has a winless run in 7 games, but they also have lost 4 in a row. And the last 5 games for both of these teams, unsurprisingly, a lot of red in terms of looking at the last 5 games for both of these teams. For Cincinnati, they suffer a heartbreaking loss against Inter Miami before suffering another heartbreaking loss in the Hell is Real Derby by losing 3-2 to Columbus. Then they just flat out getting destroyed by New England 4-1 on the road, before drawing 0-0 to Montreal and drawing 1-1 against Orlando City. For TFC, they of course lost 3-1 against Montreal in the Canadian Classic, and then they lost by that same scoreline against Inter Miami on the road. Then they lost 1-0 on the road against Atlanta, losing 2-1 at home against New England before drawing 2-2 against NYCFC. And because of the fact that both of these teams are in such a bad form, something's got to give. I mean, somebody probably is going to have their winless run come to an end. And, for Cincinnati, as much as I know they've been winless in the last 12 games, this is probably the best opportunity for them to snap their winless run, and probably their best opportunity to finally get their first win at TQL Stadium, because I know, as much as a lot of people are making the joke, the fact that it seems like the U.S. women's national team that is going to be playing at TQL Stadium soon is going to actually get the first home win in that stadium. If they can maybe avoid having that to happen and finally have the actual team that play that stadium and call it a home. You know, this is a big opportunity for Cincinnati to get a win. But, you know, if you're a Cincinnati fan, knowing this is a wooden spoon derby, even though you have a very winnable game, you know there's a lot of low expectation with this team, and especially the fact that it just feels like every time when this team felt like they have some hope, yeah, they just find ways to lose games and find ways to destroy that hope. But that being said, that's kind of the same thing with TFC this season. So, you know, when you have two teams that don't have a lot of ambition, you know, all I'll say is let's just hope this game doesn't end 0-0, and if this game does end 0-0, yeah, I don't think it's gonna make anybody happy. Not only the both fan base, but also as a neutral, where again I deem this game as the greatest game in MLS, because anytime when there's a wooden spoon derby, you know that there could be some very interesting thing that can happen in that. But that being said, moving on in terms of the next match is going to be Montreal versus Nashville, as this game will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and the actual kickoff is 8:08 p.m. local time. Both of these teams are coming off a 3-1 win at home, with Montreal winning 3-1 against TFC at home, while Nashville, of course, winning 3-1 against NYCFC at home. Montreal has a record of 8-7-7, while Nashville has a record of 9-11-2. For Montreal, as I mentioned, they won 3-1 against TFC in the Canadian Classic before drawing 1-1 before drawing 1-1 in that match. Then they had a 0-0 draw in that game against FC Cincinnati before winning 2-1 against the Red Bulls and losing 2-1 against DC United. That actually should not be in green. It actually should be in red, because anytime when a team loses, I usually put the red color as the indicator that they lost that game. So they're not actually on a 5-game unbeaten streak, but they're kind of like on a 4-game unbeaten streak if you don't count the game that they lost to DC United just 5 games ago. But for Nashville SC, they, of course, as I mentioned, went 3-1 against NYCFC. Got their first road win of the season against Atlanta United by winning 2-0 on the road, before drawing 1-1 in this game and winning 5-2 against DC United, and then, of course, losing 2-1 on the road against Inter Miami. But, yeah, you know, for Nashville, this is probably one of those games that is one of the most doable road games that they, of course, have, because, you know, as much as Montreal this season, it definitely is a team that I don't think Nashville should underestimate, because Montreal at times could be a decent team. But when you actually look at some of the games that Nashville will have to play on the road, this is definitely going to be one of the most winnable ones. So, yeah, let's see if that they can, of course, do so in this game against Montreal. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 5 games that's going to be happening in match week number 24. So I'm actually going to go a little bit out of order, because originally I was going to first preview Inter Miami versus Columbus, because the game, of course, starts before FC Dallas versus the San Jose Earthquakes. But by the time I actually finished writing this game on the board, I didn't realize that there was another game that will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And instead of me just kind of erasing that and basically put this game here and this game here, I just decided to kind of leave it like it is. But that being said, moving on into the next one, which is, of course, FC Dallas versus the San Jose Earthquakes. And like I said from last week, anytime in the Western Conference when you have a match between two teams that is part of that log jam that is between 6 through 11 plays, where there's only a 5-point gap between both, or a 5-point gap in terms of that log jam, you know it's going to be a big match, and you know it's going to be like a Western Conference 6-pointer playoff decider. And this seems like it's one of those games again, as the Quakes, of course, are going to be going on the road against Dallas, with this game kicking off at 8:30, or yeah, actually starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. Dallas, of course, coming off of a 3-2 loss against RSL on the road, while the Quakes, unfortunately, they had their 10-game unbeaten run come to an end as they lost 1-0 to Colorado at home. Last 5 games for both of these teams. For Dallas, they lost 3-2 against RSL, as I mentioned, before winning 5-3 against Austin FC in their second ever Copa Tias matchup against Austin FC. Then it was a 2-2 draw between them in the Texas Derby against the Houston Dynamo, before losing 1-0 at home against the Seattle Sounders and losing 2-0 at home against SKC. For the Quakes, as I mentioned, they had their 10-game unbeaten run come to an end with them losing 1-0 to Colorado. But they did win 2-1 on the road against the Galaxy, drew 1-1 against Minnesota at home, drew 0-0 against Vancouver, and then winning 2-1 against LAFC. And, I'm going to say that I'm kind of confident that the Quakes can maybe get something out of this game because, I think that, when you look at the past couple of head-to-head matchup between both of these teams, the Quakes have always got the better number against Dallas. In fact, it's been a long time since the Quakes have lost to Dallas. Like, last time the Quakes have lost to Dallas was all the way back in 2016. Like, not even doing when the Quakes had that miserable year in 2018 that they even lost at FC Dallas. And in fact, that was one of the two teams that the Quakes were able to get wins during the entire part of that season. But I will say this, is that if the Quakes are going to be playing against a Dallas team that have Ricardo Pepi in, then maybe I'm not going to be that confident because Ricardo Pepi is just red hot right now. He has got to have some of the most confident and just kind of the most confident that he has ever had in his career after what happened in that game against Honduras, scoring his first ever goal for the national team and also registering his first assist. But that being said, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not if he is going to be played in that game because, like I said, a lot of these players, since they have only played a couple of days ago, it's going to be tough to try to just put them in through 90 minutes and hope that they, of course, will play well. But, I have a feeling most likely we could maybe see a Ricardo Pepi starting, especially if the fact that the Quakes could be leading in this game. I will be very nervous when Pepi does get someone off the bench and that he's definitely gonna score against the Quakes. I mean, remember in the beginning of the year when both of these teams met, where the Quakes, even though they won 3-1 against Dallas in that game, who was the only goal scored in that game for Dallas? Oh yeah, that's right, it's Ricardo Pepi. So he knows how to score against the Quakes, and I won't be surprised if he does get to play in this game. He can potentially come off the bench and score maybe a big goal for Dallas in this one. But now moving on in terms of the next match, and that of course is Inter Miami versus the Columbus Crew. So we're going back to talking a game that start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 8:08 p.m. local time. For Inter Miami, they are also one of those teams that is trying to give DC United a little bit run for their money to try to get above the red line because they have also been red hot. They, of course, got a big 1-0 win against Cincinnati on the road to improve their record to 7-5-9. While for Columbus, they're heading the wrong direction in terms of the playoff conversation, as they have only had one win in their last 8 games, and their record is 7-6-10. Last 5 games for both of these teams. For Miami, they, of course, won 1-0, as I mentioned, against Cincinnati on the road, before drawing 0-0 against Orlando City, winning 3-1 at home against TFC, winning 3-2 against the Chicago Fire, and then, of course, losing 2-0 on the road against NYCFC. For Columbus, they, of course, lost 3-2 against Orlando City, won 3-2 against FC Cincinnati in the Hell is Real Derby to snap their 6-game losing streak. But before that, they lost 2-1 in the rematch of the MLS Cup against Seattle, lost 1-0 against the Red Bulls on the road, and then lost 3-0 on the road against the Chicago Fire. So, this is a big opportunity for Inter Miami to continue their incredible run. But that being said, for Columbus, this is a game that you would feel like this is a must-win game for them. I mean, as hot as Inter Miami has been, they had to get themselves really get win this game so they can maybe be back in the conversation in the playoffs, because again, they are going the wrong direction right now in terms of the playoff race. And even though they're the first team that is out, when you have a stretch where you only won 1 game out of the last 8 games, that's just not going to cut it, especially when there are also a team behind you that is in a relatively good form, and they're definitely going to pass you if you continue to go on this bad run. In fact, I think Inter Miami would pass Columbus if they were able to get all 3 points against the Crew in this one. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is Houston versus Austin FC. So, it's not often that in the same week we would actually have the battle of last place in both conferences, but that's what we got this week, which, not only the fact that the Wooden Spoon Derby is the battle of last place in the Eastern Conference, but we also have the battle of the last place in the Western Conference too, and it's just quite frankly, it happened in a Copa Tijuana matchup in this game, as I mentioned, between the Dynamo and Austin. This game, of course, will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. The Dynamo, of course, yeah, they are winless in their last 16 games, and I don't really need to kind of mention how the fact that, yeah, that is the longest winless run, and they're also 4 shy of the record for the longest winless run that any MLS team has ever gone through. And when you look at these next couple of games that they had, and to try to avoid of being that team to have the longest winless run in MLS, yeah, you feel like this is probably the most winnable game, because Austin FC themselves have not been doing very well. They lost 5 out of their last 6 games. In terms of the last 5 games for both of these teams, for the Dynamo, they lost 2-0 against the Portland Timbers, losing 2-1 against Minnesota at home, before drawing 2-2 in the Texas Derby against FC Dallas, losing 2-1 on the road against RSL, and then losing 3-1 against the Colorado Rapids at home. For Austin FC, they lost 2-1 on the road against Vancouver, lost 5-3 at home against FC Dallas, won 3-1 against the Portland Timbers, but that was their only win that they had doing this bad run, because they lost 1-0 against RSL, and then losing 2-0 against FC Dallas in their second ever Copa Tijuana matchup. But mind you, before that, they also won 3-2 against the Houston Dynamo in the first ever Copa Tijuana matchup that we've seen in MLS. So again, for Austin, they would definitely fancy themselves to potentially get another win against the Dynamo like they did earlier this season. But again, Houston, this is the biggest opportunity that they have to end this massive winless run, because when you look at these next couple of games, yeah, they don't look like any of those could be a game that they can snap their winless run. And again, I think the closer that the Dynamo are going to get to the record, I think I'm going to eventually make a video talking about how, looking at this winless run and how did it got so bad for this team. And maybe hopefully that might be a video where, if I do record it, maybe it can turn the fortune of their team, because if you are one of those people that kind of believe in jinxing or kind of conspiracy theory, maybe you would say that I do a video about your team, talk about something that is bad, and then next thing they start to perform and end the winless run. And now I think maybe Dynamo fans are going to jump into that bandwagon and basically demanding me to make that video as soon as possible, so that this winless run, of course, will come to an end. But we'll see. We'll see if this is finally the game that they will end their winless run. And I will also say that, in these last couple of games that the Dynamo play, I don't think they play badly in these last couple of games. Like, yes, I know the result doesn't show, but they actually play relatively well. But the problem is, you just could not put the ball into the back of the net. And, even though if you're the more dominant team, when you don't put the ball into the back of the net, which I'm pretty sure Austin FC fans are kind of getting tired of me talking about that, because that's the biggest issue that they have this season. Yeah, that's why they are still on this massive winless run that they've been on ever since May. But now moving on into the next match, and the last match of the busy 10-game action that's going to be happening on Saturday is Sporting KC versus the Chicago Fire. So Sporting KC has an 11-7-5 record, while the Fire has a 6-5-11 record, as this is also going to be one of those rare interconference matchups that we're going to get this season. This game will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. But for SKC, yeah, they desperately need a win in this game, because it has been a really bad slump that they've gone through, and it's been a really bad August that they had, as they've only won 1 out of the last 6 games in the month of August and also late July. Well, the Fire, they finally get a big win on the road by winning 1-0 on the road against the Red Bulls. And mind you, this is also, I believe, the 4th game that the Fire are going to be playing on the road. And there is starting to be light at the end of the tunnel if you're a Fire fan, knowing the fact that this massive road stretch is about to come to an end. But that being said, they've only won 1 game on the road, and I mentioned how this road stretch can really determine the season for the Fire, and so far, even with that 1 win against the Red Bulls, it still hasn't gone the way that they want to keep their hopes of potentially making the playoffs in the Eastern Conference alive. Now, that being said, the last 5 games for both of these teams, for Sporting KC, yeah, they got absolutely demolished in that game against LAFC by losing 4-0. Before drawing 1-1 against the Colorado Rapids, drawing 0-0 against drawing 0-0 against Minnesota, drawing 1-1 against the Portland Timbers, and they did win 2-0 against FC Dallas, but like I said, that's their only win they have in the last 6 games. For the Fire, they did win 1-0 on the road against the Red Bulls, but lost 1-0 on the road against Orlando City, lost 3-2 on the road against Inter Miami before winning 1-0 against Columbus, and then winning 2-1 against the New York Red Bulls. So, the Fire, they actually have been doing relatively well, getting 3 wins in the last 5 games, but when you look at the standings, yeah, they need more wins to keep themselves alive in the playoff conversation. And even though on paper this seems like it's a match where it doesn't seem like it's doable when they're playing against Sporting KC, which is what the best team in the Western Conference. Like I said, Sporting KC have really struggled in these last couple of games, and it's not a big surprise. The struggle has all because of the fact they have been repeatedly finding themselves behind the 8 ball, and I've said it all season. As much as I know SKC is one of those teams that is probably one of the most resilient team in MLS, if you find yourself behind the 8 ball and give up early goals and find yourself down early, it's going to eventually caught up to you, and you're eventually going to drop points and lose games. And we're starting to see in some of these resorts where Sporting KC, when you look at these last couple of resorts, they've given up early goals and really kind of had to dig themselves out of the hole to just get a point out of the game. And that's just something that they got to stop doing, because this is not a recipe for them to potentially go into the playoffs and maybe make it the playoff run this season. But now, moving on into the last match on this board that I'm going to be previewing, and the last match to preview of match week number 24 is the lone Sunday game, which is actually going to be a late night one if you're living in the East Coast, because this game between LAFC versus RSL is not going to start until 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, and it will not kick off until it's 7:38 p.m. local time, which is 10:38 p.m. Eastern time. Now, LAFC, they got a much-needed 4-0 win against SKC, probably the best that they look so far this season at home by winning 4-0 against them and improve their record to 7-6-9. While RSL, they of course won 3-2 against FC Dallas at home, which was a huge victory to keep themselves just above the red line and fencing Vancouver to potentially leapfrog them, and their record is 8-6-8. Although, depending on what happened tonight, the Whitecaps could potentially leapfrog RSL in this game, or leapfrog RSL tonight temporarily until RSL does have a chance to maybe get themselves back above the red line when they play against LAFC. Now, that being said, for LAFC, in the last 5 games, they, as I mentioned, even with the 4-0 win that they have against SKC, it's been pretty ugly stretch that they've been on. They draw 3-3 against the Galaxy in El Tráfico before losing 2-1 on the road against Vancouver, losing 1-0 against Atlanta United, and then losing 2-1 on the road to the San Jose Earthquakes. For RSL, they of course win 3-2 against FC Dallas, lost 4-1 against the Vancouver Whitecaps, lost 2-1 on the road against the Rapids before winning 2-1 against Houston, and then winning 1-0 against Austin FC. So RSL's been kind of inconsistent in the last couple of games, but again, for LAFC, especially with the way that, now that they are going to potentially get some of their player back from international duty, and that this is not going to be like that team that play against SKC, which it's still remarkable, the fact that they literally almost kind of play a Las Vegas Lights kind of team, and they were still able to beat one of the best team in the league. That was a Sporting KC team that was actually putting a relatively strong squad coming into that game. But I'm pretty sure that they definitely want to see their best team back in the game, and we'll see whether or not if Brian Rodriguez is going to be back in this game. I also have heard no word on whether Carlos Vela is going to be back in this game either, which most likely he's not. But there's some positive that LAFC fans might have after that big win, and let's just hope to see if that is going to be one that transition where they can get themselves together and maybe start a good run against an RSL team that is just hanging on for dear life to trying to stay above the red line right now. But that being said, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this preview. And as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction for all 11 games remaining that's going to be happening in match week number 24. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.